Our slides that we've had for many, many years on VCR, and so this is our first attempt at it. Actually, in 1942, when we first started our slides, the first slides that you'll see will be the ones that went through our shipwreck. Our furniture went to Newfoundland, so we didn't save many of the slides, but what we could save, we kept them, and these first ones are those. Now this is Mom and Dad, Grandpa and Grandma Swanson, and this was when I was in flight training out in California, and they brought my old Chevy that I bought, and they brought it out to me at that time. This was taken when I went through flight training, and I was down in El Paso, Texas, and that was Juarez. We were over in Juarez that day. Now, this picture was taken over in New Guinea when we first got over there, and one of the first things we had to do was build our split trenches, and in case we ever got bombed and whatnot, we'd have a place to dive in. And that's me, in case you can't recognize it. And this is a Lee Bearskin, who was another pilot that I went through training with, and we're good friends, and then still good friends. This is a picture outside. I'm on the left there, Lee, and the navigator, and you can see the land in the back, which is New Guinea area. The fellow on the right there is name of Ford. That was Lee's co-pilot. And this was our so-called place where we shaved and brushed our teeth, and real good facilities we had over there. Another picture outside the tent. We did our own washing and hung our own clothes, and that's a picture of our tent. When we first got there, they told us to throw our tents up there. There were 6 of us officers that came across together, and the first night we almost got ate up with mosquitoes because we didn't have our tent up properly and whatnot, so we started building it the next day. That's another picture of our stand, and of course the water was, we had to get our water and bring it to where our wash bin. And that's a picture of our tent after we got it built up on the hill. We even later put screen around there so we didn't have to mosquito nets. And of course this is after the war, when I came back from overseas, and Mom and I decided to get married, and this is before we got married, and this is at Mom's house in front. You might recognize it. And a picture of me in the same position. And there's Mom again, and again, this is before we got married.
On my front porch.
And then we headed off on our honeymoon. This is the picture taken at the step in Denver, Colorado, at 5,280 feet. You know, they refer to as the Mile High State, and that's a step that is mile high. And this was on our way through the Rockies. Another picture on our going through the Rockies, and there's my flight jacket, which I never have been able to find, so it must have gone down with the Sagita. And then this is at Salt Lake. We stayed a couple days in Salt Lake City, and that's the Great Salt Lake. And another picture as we headed off across the lands into Las Vegas. And this is a picture taken. We stayed in Santa Monica for 2 or 3 weeks on our honeymoon. It was a redistribution center that I had to go to where we ran a lot of tests and got our orders and whatnot. And in the background you can see, and I think that was an old dance hall in the background there. And this is the Del Mar Hotel where we spent our honeymoon, and right on the beach at Santa Monica. And that's out on the beach, Santa Monica, and that's me on the right, and Mom you can see in the background there. And another picture on the beach, that's me with the dark glasses, and I don't know where Mom is on this one.
In the back, under the umbrella.
Then we went, this is after I got to communication school, and then I was assigned to Washington, D.C. at Bowling Field, and this was a picture taken in cherry blossom time. And there was the Washington Monument, Mom, and Jefferson Memorial, and a picture of Mom. And this was Washington's, Mount Vernon, right? Mount Vernon that we went out and visited. We had a lot of these pictures taken, but most of them were destroyed. We were just managed to save just a few of them. And that's in Annapolis we went to visit. And I think that this was probably in Annapolis too. And another picture at Annapolis. And this was taken in Washington, D.C. In the background are the apartments we had. And these are the pictures of the apartments. So this apartment building is just a couple blocks right above Bowling Field. And our apartment was to the left on the ground floor. And that, Rusty, was not where you were born, but certainly where you were, your first place of living. You were born there on Bowling Field, and we lived there in these apartments. And we had a victory garden, had a big garden, and we had a lot of things in there. We did a lot of growing. That's Mom.
This is Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C.
As Dad said, these are the only slides we got from about 12 years, 10 years, because they were all lost in the shipwreck when we went to Newfoundland. In front of Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. At the Lincoln Memorial, and Grover and Fran White, and another one of the Whites, and Gleason, yeah. Tom Barger and their oldest daughter, and Bee over there. Again, all these pictures were washed with salt water and diesel oil, so we didn't save very many of this batch. Gleason's home in New Hampshire, and we visited on our trip to the Northeast. They had parrots that called the dogs. This is the Old North Church in Boston. Better picture of the Old North Church. A view from the Old North Church of the Boston Harbor, oneth by land and twoeth by sea. Feeding the pigeons in the Boston Commons. Bunker Hill. And this was Old Ironsides for sure. Cambridge, Massachusetts. This is our only slide of Rusty when he was an infant. The rest were all lost in the shipwreck. So this is Rusty as probably a week or two old. Rusty and Mom when he was about 4 or 5 months old. We left Washington when he was 7 months old. This is the one picture we have of Rusty when he was really little, and this was out in front of our apartments. And I wanted to run this on just a little bit longer. This was still in Washington, D.C., and Rusty must have been maybe 4 or 5 months old, I think.
A picture from when we got stationed down in Biloxi, Mississippi, and that's Keystone Air Force Base. And this is Biloxi, Mississippi, and that's the light tower just off the water in the Gulf of Mexico. Picture of the beach in Biloxi there. One of the prettiest beaches. Actually, this doesn't look very pretty here. They were working on it, but it is a pretty beach. This is the back bay. We used to fish off there. When we first got there, we didn't have a house, and we lived in a little apartment just off this pier there. And this is on that pier, and this is Rusty, and he must have been about a year old then, I guess. This is the picture taken of Grandpa and Grandma Swanson's home there in Omaha. It's a picture taken in Omaha. There's Mom and Rusty there. And again, that's Mom and Rusty. Now, this is when I went over in the Korean War and was stationed on Okinawa. And of course, this is one of the Sagita films that we salvaged a little bit of. And it's another picture outside of where I lived in the Quonset hut there. And this was the chapel on Okinawa that I attended. That's Kadena area, which I flew out of. It's another picture of Okinawa. That's Kadena base there. That's where I flew out of. And we flew B-29s out of there. And this is the waterway leading into the island there. And that's in the middle there is a Japanese boat which was sunk during World War II. And during the Korean War, we used to practice dropping bombs on it. Very end of the northern end of Okinawa. And when in World War II, when the Americans came in there and they pushed the Japanese off to the far end of this island, instead of the Japanese surrendering, the majority of them just leaped off of that cliff there and down. We went down in there, and there are just many bones where the Japanese just leaped off there and killed themselves. And this is the base of Naha, which is the southern end of Okinawa, and it's a fighter base. And that's up in the northern end of the island, and that is Ernie Pyle's memorial. You can see it in the distance there, sticking up. And this is on my way home from Okinawa in the Korean War. We stopped in Kwajalein. I took a B-29. We flew it home. So our last stop before coming to the States, we landed in Hawaii at Hickam. And they made us stay 24 hours. They wouldn't let us go straight in because we'd been flying 30 hours in. And of course, I was assigned at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. And this is apartments right out on the beach, which is where we stayed until we got our place on the base itself. And another picture of the beach. There's Rusty and Dick. And again, those are the picture of the apartments right on the beach. There's Rusty and Dick. Gulf of Mexico. And there's Bob, and as a baby. Bob was born right there at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. Bob again.
think we had the light in the wrong spot here, but these are all Bob. We were living on Boatner Drive on Eglin Air Force Base. Dusty and Dick. There's a good one. Almost talked to him there. Dressed up for Sunday school. Boatner Drive, Eglin Air Force Base. Another good one. These were our quarters. Bob, Dusty and Dick and Mom. This was in our backyard. And right off behind the trees was a bayou. We took a trip to southern Florida, and this was Marineland. And this was on Miami Beach. We stayed in a hotel, and that's the ocean behind us there.